Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more episode with Data Talks with Raghav. Today, I have David Freitag. I've been following him for about 3-4 months on LinkedIn. He's got about 9,000 followers, but that's not the main story. I've been following him because he was an English teacher who's turned to a data engineer. Welcome. Thank you for coming to the show. But I opened up with one common question. How did you get into this data? How did you get into this data thing?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on. So I'll tell you a bit about where I am now and how I got there. So I'm a senior data engineer at American Family Insurance, and I build data pipelines as a data engineer. And most of the work that I do is to build data sets for data science modeling. I started as a high school English teacher. That's what I went to undergrad for, and I taught high school English in Milwaukee, actually where you are, for 6 years. And then I was having my quarter life crisis. I was about to turn 30, and I was like, oh, do I really want to do this? Is this exactly what I want to do for the rest of my career? And so I looked at other options, and I ended up getting hired for a job teaching clients at a startup. And so I moved to New York City, and I went to go work for a tech startup, and I taught the clients of the startup I work for the how to use the software. And so it was like this really like kind of logical jump from like, oh, I'm teaching high schoolers to like, okay, I'm working in tech, and I'm teaching people who buy this piece of software how to use it and how to make money with it. And I was always like a big computer nerd. That's always been a part of my background. So it seemed like a logical jump for me personally too. And I did that for a while, and I kind of came to understand the world outside of teaching. And there were people I worked with at the startup job. There was a data scientist who I worked with. And I learned about his job, and I thought, oh wow, this is really cool. I want to do this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him about it. I talked to other people who were working as data scientists, and almost all of them had gone to graduate school. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to graduate school, and I'm going to get my master's degree, and I'm going to change careers. And I went to graduate school during the pandemic. It was completely online. My whole degree was totally remote. And I graduated, and then I had an internship on a data science team when I was in graduate school. And so I got some a little bit of work experience as a data scientist, and I had taken a bunch of data engineering classes when I was in graduate school. And because I had that experience taking those data engineering classes, I was like, oh, you know what I'd like even more is I really like the data engineering side of this. It's like analytics is this whole kind of continuum. And I was like, this is where I want to end up. And I applied to a bunch of jobs, and I got a really great offer. And that's how I've ended up. And now I'm back at the beginning of the story here. And that's how I got my job that I have now.
Very good. I mean, in fact, so somebody who inspired you to get it back to school and get everything going on. So probably we, at least with this video, we can inspire many others, right? So with that, let me take it to the next goal, because you said you like data engineering. So on a regular day, what are the roles and responsibilities of a data engineer? There might be something which you really like, maybe the building aspect of it, but what is this role, and what are the responsibilities? What does a data engineer do in a day? What's about all this?
Yes. And maybe I can even talk about like where a data engineer kind of sits within an organization.
Sure.
Um, so like in any organization, especially like a large organization that has lots of data, you have data coming in, and you have software engineers who are like taking that data, and they're ingesting it, and they're dumping it into like a data lake, which is basically just like a place where I can throw all our data. It's going to go in there. It's going to be unstructured, and maybe they add some structure to it. Then you have your data engineers, who are kind of the next step in this. You can almost think of it as like an assembly line, where you go from like raw data at the beginning to like insights and business decisions and predictive models and machine learning and artificial intelligence. That's like the end of it, right? And this is like how the sausage gets made. You get your raw ingredients, and that's the end result. Data engineering is kind of the second step, or the middle step, where we have all this raw data. Maybe some of it has even been transformed into like a more usable format, but it's not in a format that people who are like data analysts or business analysts, business decision makers, or data scientists, they can't quite use the data yet to do their magic. And so data engineers are this like this middle step to take this like kind of messy, raw, complicated data, pull it all together from a bunch of different sources, and turn it into something that all these other people like data analysts, data scientists can use. And that is what I do every day. Basically, is I do the work that takes the messy, crazy, dirty data that's everywhere and pull it into a format. And in my job, my primary stakeholders are data scientists, and so the data
Hmm.
sets that that I create, that my team creates, are to power data scientists, and then they use that to build predictive models. Which, and I work for an insurance company. It's used to price insurance.
Which makes sense.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and something else I would add is it's not only do data engineers do all this kind of like data transformation and wrangling and manipulation, but data engineers, they're engineers, which means they build systems. And
Yeah.
so it's not just about taking crazy, messy data from point A to point B and making it clean and nice and delivering it in a package. It's about building a system that does that for you
Yes.
automatically.
With that, I have another question. I mean, I'll go to it triggered me a new question. Looks like when you're talking about, there are two different people whom you're talking to completely, right? The
Mm-hmm.
person, there's an input and an output, right? So input may be messy data, let's call it. I mean, whatever that ingestion is, you want that data. Sometimes it's managed by an IT system and they're already dumping it properly. But output, uh, the data engineer as a role is not only uh, doing the work, but I think understanding how your data scientists really want that data in a structural form.
Yes.
So you should be able to create that format too. So you're a kind of a creator and architect of that data too. So I don't think it's just transforming creation. Do scientists give you the requirements or you help them? How does that collaboration between team works? Do
Yeah,
you?
that's a great question,
Mhm.
because you have to have some business knowledge to understand a little bit, at least, about like the data you're working with.
Hmm.
You also have to be able to talk to data scientists. So I had a little bit of data science experience already that was really appealing, I think, to my boss when he was looking at me as a potential
Hmm.
hire, because he's like, oh, David will be able to talk to these data scientists who we
Right.
work with all the time. And you have to understand a little bit of their work and what they do, because they may give us requirements, but it's kind of like they don't just give you a they don't just say do this. You have
Yeah.
to understand what's behind the request.
Mm.
And and data scientists, they love having as much data as possible, and they love running experiments. And so they will come to my team and they'll say, hey, we want this attribute. But they're not just asking for
Yes.
this attribute and that one and that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a bigger ask behind it, and they're really trying to pull insights out of experiments. And so if you understand some of that, that can inform how, okay, we're going to give them, we're not just going to give them this one column they asked for. They're really asking for this bigger picture. So we're going to give them a couple different columns. We're going to give them a certain transformation that's going to be useful. But also, it's also about like talking the same language as the people
Correct.
you
Now,
work
which
with.
which makes sense. So the collaboration aspect is like you're in the middle, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I love the way how you put it. We are right in the middle, so we got to understand how this is coming and how this is going. Okay. With that said, for now, if we say that we are cooking, let's say, what kind of skills do we really data engineer really needs to do, and taking in the direction of, let's say, 2024, if somebody wants to start, you can generalize as much, but the objective of the question is like if somebody wants to start new, uh intermediate and advanced, however you want to take it, and
Mm-hmm.
how do their 2024 roadmap should look, and what kind of skills do you think?
Yes. So I think the first and most important skill is SQL. And SQL is like the bedrock of any work you do with data. And SQL has been around forever. It's been around for like at least 50 years. So it's not going anywhere. So the SQL skills that you will learn, you will
Mhm.
use for the rest of your career. Like, tools come and go, and SQL is not going anywhere. And
Yeah.
that's something that makes it very unique and different than a lot of other tools that engineers use.
Yes.
Um, and so I think SQL is a huge one. Python is, I think, also a necessity, especially for a data engineer, but for any kind of data career, it's becoming more and more important.
Mm.
Even data analyst job postings sometimes ask for a little bit of Python
Yes.
experience. It depends where you're working, but it's always nice to have, I think.
Yes.
And then I think, especially for a data engineer now, and maybe this wasn't as true a couple of years ago, but it's definitely true now, you need experience in a cloud environment.
Okay.
And a lot of the work of data engineering at many companies is, hey, we've got all these on-premise servers. It's a server in the closet at headquarters. We need to get this data off the server. We need to get it into the cloud, and then we need to organize it, and we need to move it around. And that's data engineering work too. Now, some of that has happened at a lot of companies already, or companies are in that process. But you have to have experience in a cloud environment because that's where all the data lives now. But that's
Mm,
also where the cloud is basically the ability to rent distributed compute,
mm,
and that allows you to do your work so much faster, so much more efficiently. And so it's like AWS is the most popular cloud
okay.
environment in like across industries.
Yes.
I think Azure is second place and GCP is third. I
Right.
do like all my work in GCP because the company I work for is like
Oh,
a Google Cloud shop. That's what they really prefer. Um, if you know one cloud, you can learn the others,
yeah. Yeah.
which is like, it's nice that some of that knowledge is transferable. But I think that's absolutely, I think it's absolutely an essential now for data engineering. And I would also say Git and GitHub is another one of these like must haves. You need to know a little bit of your way around the command line,
Mm.
so you can do some like Git work. I guess I would also tack on like the Linux command line there. I don't think you need to be a total expert because Linux
Some
is.
terminal knowledge. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
Some terminal knowledge. Right. Linux is this like, like never ending rabbit hole, but Git and GitHub for sure. Uh, and I'll just say, for example, my company uses GitLab, which is another,
Wow.
you know,
Yes.
Git product, but
Its
that
own thing.
integrates, it's its own
Yeah.
thing, but it
Yeah.
integrates really nicely where you can, through this thing, and this is a more kind of like intermediate or advanced data engineering
Mm.
concept, something called CI/CD, or
Right.
continuous integration, continuous development. Like a lot of DevOps engineers will be like, "Oh yeah,
Right.
that's easy," um, but you save your changes to code in GitLab, and it gets deployed in the cloud environment,
Mm.
and it cascades that you change the code in one place, and everywhere that code gets run and deployed is now updated, and so it's about
And
this
GitLab is not
synchronicity.
is GitLab is
Yeah,
a paid thing, or I don't know. I can go. I Because we use GitHub a lot,
yeah,
but I we don't use because but there's a integration happening automatically because
yes.
we have Docker containers managing those, but I've not played around with GitLab. So GitLab is a paid thing or
Yeah, think of it as it's like it is basically the same thing as GitHub. It's beefier, it has additional features, and I think their target customer is like large enterprises. Like I work for a very
mm,
big insurance company. And so I don't know how much GitLab makes sense for like a smaller
it
operation,
doesn't. Yeah, yeah.
um but the point is basically like this integration between like like saving your code
Yes.
in a cloud repository, and
Yep.
then the connection between that and the rest of the infrastructure,
Wow.
and making
That's
that
very
connection
powerful.
between it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super powerful. And
Mm,
again, I think that's like an intermediate, more advanced level thing probably for data engineers. It depends where you work. Some places it's a baseline requirement.
correct.
You mentioned Docker.
Yes, we did.
Yep.
We use Docker, but yeah.
I would say on my list of more like nice to have or intermediate advanced level skills are like Docker. I think Docker is it's super useful as a way to deploy something, because like a Docker container runs everywhere. You don't
Yeah.
have to worry about all your dependencies getting confused.
Yep.
In data engineering, there's this concept of workflow orchestration, and
Yeah.
there are lots of tools for that, and that's actually the place where there's a lot of like companies fighting it out right now for dominance, because there's like like SQL is the dominant language for manipulating data, like far away, like it's not even a
No
question, but
question
like,
about it. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But like Airflow, for example, is a popular workflow orchestration tool. It's not the only one, and a lot of people hate it. I find parts of Airflow to be very frustrating. On my team, we have even engineered the way our Airflow environment works so that we use as little of Airflow as possible and offload most of our workload to Docker containers. Um, but I think learning some sort of like workflow orchestration tool, Airflow again is like a really popular one,
Yep.
is important. And then another thing I would mention, and this goes along with the cloud, there's something called Terraform. And
Yes.
terra means earth. And so like terraform, you're forming the earth. And terraform is this language that you can use for this concept called infrastructure as code. And it's this really cool concept. And it's all about this idea that, like, if I want to create resources out in the cloud, if I want to spin up virtual machines, if I want to build a new like Kubernetes cluster, like however I want to deploy my cloud resources, I define that in code. And the language I use for that is Terraform. And
Wow.
you run that code and you can recreate a cloud resource in a different, you can set up multiple environments. If something breaks, you can start over. And it's another one of those things about, like, engineers build systems. And
Yes.
this is another tool for systematizing something you would otherwise have to do manually.
Wow. So that's a lot. I mean, to be
I've thrown a
honest,
lot out there. I've thrown a
yeah, no,
lot out there.
it's no, I'll break it down. To be honest, we started with SQL and Python. Maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
their initial bedrock. Let's go. Okay,
Yes.
guys, let's get in here with SQL and Python. You want to build up a little? Go start learning cloud, AWS,
Yes.
Azure, GCP. Okay, you want to start making connections? Go GitLab. All right, you're up there right now. Go do orchestration, go do Docker. Now you're everywhere. So you're in that DevOps model, and so you have a clear pathway. You choose where you are. You are here, you're already SQL, Python, start learning cloud. And that's what I would say. If you're okay, you're also good in cloud, start making those connections. How I can get GitHub talking to my code and deploying somewhere. And it's an amazing roadmap. I mean, it's like pick what you want. It looks like there's a lot of stuff, right? Play with it and go for it. What are you saying? That's what it sounds to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And I would say, it seems overwhelming. There's so many tools, there's so much to learn. And it really, like, it's just kind of like start anywhere.
Yeah.
And you're going to be learning the rest of your career. And in 5 years, a lot of these tools will have changed.
Yeah, we use
So,
Snowflake a lot. So we use
yep.
Snowflake a lot. One of the wonderful things what we use is something called dynamic tables. So it orchestrates by itself, but it's not amazing, but it's good enough. But I get and it's got its own task management system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an orchestration. So we thought about Airflow, but yeah, we have this already. So do we really need to go into Airflow? With one of the we kind of touched up on the next topic too. What are the emerging trends? I had that topic, but do you see what kind of challenges learning in all these technologies, right? It's okay, right? Because I get it, because I'm a senior data manager. I understand the landscape right now. I've got 13 14 years of experience. You are in this field for a very long experience. Maybe we understand, right? But somebody who's coming off of college, but let's say maybe college, he or she is a data analyst, want to switch into data engineering, right? uh, Something to keep in mind, of course, SQL. But can you relate to anything in your initial days when you were, for me, anything. I saw one of your recent posts, like there are some functions which are really tough,
Mm-hmm.
right? For me, it was really tough too initially, right? I could never understand partition. What's all this, right? So anything which relates, that's on the technical standpoint. Anything you feel, uh, hey guys, look out for this. These are some important things. You'll use this a lot. Second thing is like any uh, other kind of challenges becoming a data engineer. Yeah, if there are any. Yeah.
Yeah. I think on a technical level,
Mm-hmm.
um, I hesitate to name like really specific skills to say, like, and you're talking about, like, I think I had like a post on window function.
Yes.
Um, I would say, if you have to pick one thing that you're really going to sharpen and get
Yeah.
good at, or two things, maybe I would say sharpen your SQL skills and your Python skills,
Mm-hmm.
because those are going to apply in the long term, but they'll also apply, like, a lot of these other tools are really just ways to deploy SQL and Python in different places at different times. And so it comes back to, like, that's the core skill set. Something I would mention that was really helpful for me when I was in graduate school, um, and something that has leveled up my skill set and my abilities in my career. I have built a number of personal projects. And when you decide, you're like, okay, I'm going to build a personal project. I don't know exactly what technologies I'm going to use, but I want to kind of do something like this, right? and you have like a vision in your mind, maybe you saw something somebody else did, you like browse around GitHub, you found something good. If you find something that you think is really interesting to you, you are going to be intrinsically motivated to work really hard on it. And so you're going to learn all kinds of new skills because you have to in order to make your project happen. You're like, oh,
Yes.
I want to figure out how to do this thing, but I don't know how to do it. I'm gonna have to learn window functions. And then
Yes.
you're like super motivated to go and learn that skill because it has a purpose. And you will like, in my experience, and this is just how I work, but I think I'm not unique.
Hmm.
When I have that kind of a situation where it's like, oh, I want to accomplish this thing and I got to learn this thing to get there, I'm so motivated just, to learn it and to, to figure out exactly, like how do I learn window functions so I can apply it in my project and get me to this end goal. And having that, like, like a really strong drive to to like accomplish that is what will push you, or will
Yes.
cause you to push yourself.
Yeah.
And that is you're gonna push the boundary of what you know, and you're gonna be excited to do it. And I think that's my secret for like learning these new skills is you have to find ways to be excited about it for some personal reason, and that's the hack.
Yeah. So tie your goal, if you want to become a data engineer, tie your goal to something personal, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
automatically the journey is you becoming a data engineer. So you're saying it's a journey, you'll figure out the
Yes.
journey, but you should have some purpose to travel that journey. I mean, it's an amazing advice. I mean, people whom I talk to over the weekends, because I do a lot of mentoring. I mean, I've done mentoring in Africa, I've done mentoring in the US. Whenever there is school season here, when they come out, I talk to a lot of interns. They're confused a lot between AI and data engineer. For me, it felt, oh, uh, isn't it this? Because probably I am biased with my 13 years of knowledge, right? Right, 13. But for them, oh, isn't this AI? AI doing everything? I'm like, no, no, this is data engineering. No, this is data science. So I think there is a clear problem, people segregating these job roles. So of course, SQL definitely helps. But do you think this might be a question you can say, hey, there's I don't have an answer for it. I'm completely fine with it. But uh, people are going towards AI and just learning Python and not having SQL skills and I mean supporting skills. Is that a journey? I don't know how to even ask the question because you see, I see the confusion in them. Hey, I want to be that AI person, right? Very good. Be that AI person, but that's a different programming language. It's not data engineering. Um, but are you seeing maturity in companies where data is already ready and AI is already out there? What is your? Taking the call into a completely different direction
Yeah.
because I don't know if we can build an AI roadmap, but I'm taking in that direction. The call, yeah.
I think everybody is really captivated by generative AI right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
People who would never pay attention to technology are like fascinated by it all of a sudden because it feels so exciting and new and groundbreaking. And it kind of reminds me of a couple years ago, or maybe even like 10 years ago, there was a similar kind of thing with data science, where it's like, oh,
Yes.
data science is like, it's the future, you can predict the future. And it's this, I think there was an article in like the Harvard Business Review, and they called like data science is like the sexiest
Sexiest.
career of the 21st
Yes.
century. It's like famous article that like made everyone want to be a data scientist.
Yes.
And it's like, data science at its core is really just statistics. It's
Yes.
really just math. And generative AI at its core is just another, it's just another kind of extension of
Yes.
this. It's a generative AI really is just, it's a large language model. And what makes it really exciting today is the data that trained that model. These models have existed for several years. They haven't been that impressive. The models have been getting better, but the reason they're getting better is because they have fed so much data to these models. They are now starting to do impressive things.
Yep.
And so it's, it's always like data science is data plus statistics, or you could call it maybe even machine learning, equals predict the future. Generative AI is data plus large language model or large vision model. I'm not sure what you call them.
Yes.
but equals, ChatGPT and the ones that, like produce like an image for you and things like that. It's all the same frameworks that have always existed. It's just the next iteration of it. And I think if you're like a young person and you're just hearing about it, you're like, generative AI is so cool. What do I do? I just want to be part of it. It's, and it's like, whatever, start anywhere. But also it's just the next iteration of something that's already existed. And like I said, it's the same, it's frameworks that it's just building on top of an existing framework. And data is what underlies it. Data is what separates a good model from a bad model.
Yes.
And what will separate the good AI companies from the less successful ones.
I think I love the way you put it. Actually, I mean, this is a bonus question, and I think I got the answer. Hey, young people, the way you need to look at it is get strong in data. Of course, you want to go become AI, start learning those LLMs, large language models, right? Yeah. Start learning about them. If you think you're going to fit there, fit there. But if you think you want to be at the place which feeds it, that's data. So that's David's and me too. And that's where we sit. But it's an amazing. I had a question where how should people gain hands-on experience, but I think you covered in your portfolio. Looks like we kind of covered most of it. I mean, any last minute advice? But otherwise, it was a great session. I mean, any last minute advice for whatever you think? I mean, we spoke about the journey, but any last minute advice?
Yeah, I'm just looking through my notes. I know you sent me a couple of the questions at the time. We talked about projects. Here's so I have a morsel of like job search or job interviewing advice that I would give. Is because it's something I feel like I had to kind of learn, and that also worked really well for me once I learned it. So I went to graduate school and I got a formal credential, and that was important for me as a career changer. It may not necessarily be that important to have a graduate degree, but you might need some sort of like certification. Some way to signal. The principle is that companies want to hire people who they know can hit the ground running, and they want proof that you can do the job when you arrive, at the office in person or virtually. And so something like a credential is a way to do that. But I want to like reemphasize the importance of projects and your ability to talk about either a personal project or a project that you maybe have done like in an internship or in graduate school or as part of a certification or something like that. And if you can make yourself stand out as someone who can show through the way you talk about your work or showing it your work itself through a portfolio, you can convince a company, hey, when you hire me, you're hiring somebody who I will hit the ground running. And I feel like that is something that will set you apart as a job seeker and particularly in interviews. And I think that's in my opinion, I think that's the key. Having interviewed people to become data engineers on the team that I work on, I think that's something that really impressed me about people I interviewed.
So the way I should put it is, if I come to you and if I've done something already, maybe it's a bitsy tiny thing, right? But I'm able, so you can definitely see that passion and knowledge because I was able to do something. Okay.
Yep.
He or she was able to figure out this on their own. Looks like they have it in them rather than having a credential, which is good. But as part of that credential, if you're able to build a thing and if you're able to express, because you said one thing about it, you're able to talk about it, right?
So, yes, that's key.
It's key. So if I'm able to do something and I'll be able to talk about it, you can pick on any particular topic on that and I should be able to tell you, I've done it, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's an amazing way to do it. I mean, that's the only motivation. So go to the journey, pick a purpose, try to become a data engineer, have a bedrock, SQL, Python, cloud, then Airflow orchestration, Docker, GitHub, and stuff. So pick your segue and make your progression towards becoming data engineer. It's an amazing roadmap. I mean, it's so nice to have you. Sometimes it's good to talk to people like you. We get clarity and everybody gets clarity. But any questions to David, definitely reach out to us. Put it in your comments, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm going to put David's LinkedIn profile, my LinkedIn profile, both of them in the description. But Thank you so much, David. This is an amazing discussion today.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll say, I'm going to do like a very quick shameless promotion before we say goodbye.
Sure.
I'm going to be teaching a class
Mhm.
about. I'm going to do a free class, and then there's going to be a class that will cost some money, but it's a much more full feature class on some of this data engineering stuff. If you follow me on LinkedIn, if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see all this, and I give lots of tips on all kinds of things I talked about today. So if you want to learn more, that's what I do, is I put that stuff out on the internet. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
I'll do that, and I'll surely put it on my LinkedIn post where you